there's lots of things I like about the polyvagal theory, and some of them are related to what is implied by having such a theory, and some of them are related to the specifics of the theory.
Mm-hmm.
So first, to talk about what is implied about the theory
Mm-hmm.
is that it's a theory that talks about states of the nervous system
Mm-hmm.
that are in response to our interactions. And so, what I like about it is it's taking a view of a human being as essentially interactive, which is the opposite of one person psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to believe that every life form is an interaction. So it makes a lot of sense to look at what happens to us human beings when we are in interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing I like about it, again, even before going into the specifics of the theory, is that it talks about states of the nervous system
Mm-hmm.
and identifies circuits in the nervous system that corresponds to these states. So what I like about it is it's about something that corresponds to my notion of self states, which people have identified a long time ago, and even psychoanalysts have been talking about self state. So there's nothing new about it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's giving further validation to the notion of self states by saying the broad categories of self states are not something that is some kind of a subjective notion, but actually correspond to states of the nervous system, and that these states of the nervous system correspond to the way the person is experiencing interaction. So there's something very fundamental about a person in interaction and how we are affected by it, that feels very profoundly going to a sense of defining the human condition within, say, our biological constraints and how we evolved. So there's something I found very centering about that. Okay. Now I mentioned there's something else I like about it, which is the specifics.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, the traditional view of the autonomic nervous system is that you have two circuits. One is a sympathetic, which is in charge of fight flight. So when there is a challenge, this is, we rise to the occasion by giving
Mm-hmm.
extra energy for either fighting or running away. And the other, which is the vagal system, and that's a system that slows us down in terms of allows us to sleep, allows us to digest. You can't do that when you're full of adrenaline and fighting or running away.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's a system of rest, which is absolutely necessary,
Mm-hmm.
but also in primitive animals functions as some kind of a break of last resort. So actually, in very simple creatures, basically you have the switch on and off. Either they're doing something or they're shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then evolutionarily came the second circuit, which is the sympathetic nervous system. And instead of just being on or shut down, when there is an emergency, it's giving you the extra energy in order to go and fight or survive by running away. What the polyvagal theory does is it's called polyvagal because Porges identified a branch, and it said, what you call the parasympathetic circuit, which is mediated by the vagus nerve, actually has two branches because the vagus nerve itself has two branches. And so there's the oldest part, which, dorsal vagal, so the back part of the vagus nerve, which does essentially what was ascribed to the parasympathetic system itself, which is to slow down, to shut down, to allow rest, to allow digestion. But the more recent part of the vagus nerve is what he calls the ventral vagal circuit, and ventral because it's in the front, and is actually a more sophisticated kind of nervous wiring, is myelinated. That system mediates social engagement. So it developed, actually for mammals who were very connected to each other. And that social engagement system is actually also the circuit that allows us to be mindful when we interact with things other than human beings. So one of the major findings of the polyvagal theory is to identify, one of the strong hypotheses it has is to identify a circuit, and says social engagement and mindfulness have their own circuit. Before that, with the traditional theory, the idea was that the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system were like essentially the hot and cold faucets in your sink. And if you wanted to have medium water, you'd have to adjust to open both so that you have a little bit of hot and a little bit of cold, and you have medium water, and you can switch, that way. What mindfulness is really actually not too much excitement break, and then the middle was just right. What the polyvagal theory, the major hypothesis, is to say, actually, no, there is a circuit that mediates mindfulness. So fundamentally, the reason I'm very excited about it is it says it's not that mindfulness is absence of excess, but you actually, you can have that absence of excess if you want. It's good. It's a bandwidth through which you can actually, mindfulness is possible. But what happens in mindfulness is you need to actually engage in order to increase the mindfulness. Okay? So it's not an absence of too much. It's actually the fact that as you engage mindfulness, you become more mindful. And that I find to be very consistent with my experience, the experience of people I know, the practices of mindfulness, but also, practice in psychotherapy, to say that what it is as you help people engaging with others and engaging with activities that are more conducive to mindfulness, you actually increase that. And then, because that the peculiarity of this circuit is it allows to be mixed with the other circuits. So if you increase the range of mindfulness, then in some way you can add a little bit of excitement, but it's going to be contained within a more mindful way. So you can have anger, but anger that's managed in such a way that's within the range of you being able to be mindful. And actually, it's going to be used more to fuel your effectiveness in the world. Uh, the range can also accommodate some of the dorsal vagal shut down, so that you can have, instead of shutting down, that allows you to slow down, and slow down to the level of having intimate connection with people, but also slow down in the sense of having maybe blissful moments of contemplation. Okay. And so that's the beauty of that area of mindful engagement, originally social engagement. So how you use it in therapy, I find very useful, because when we talk about felt sense, I like the idea of relating the felt sense to what happens in interaction, and that the felt sense is actually an experience of a bodily activation. So the felt sense is not something that is, ethereal and we're connected to it, but it's as we are in interaction, our body is getting uh, innate, intuitive reaction to the situation as a whole that we're not necessarily aware of. And our mind, our brain, scans the body and gets all kinds of signals, and those signals form the felt sense. And so the felt sense is that experience of how we are reacting to interaction. So now, the beauty of having a sense of it being three circuits is when we are in a place where we are flooded with danger and going fully into shutdown because it's too much, then the felt sense we have is actually more of a felt sense of shutdown. So it's not something that we as therapists are going to work on, but that felt sense of shutdown is an invitation to correct the underlying situation that makes us shut down, bring us back to a place where there is energy, and then it's going to be possible to work. But let's say you get, you're in a place of fight and flight. So the felt sense is going to be a felt sense of aggression or of running away. And again, that's not a felt sense, it's in the mindfulness zone. So it's not something that you're going to work at in terms of working with a felt sense like we do as a focusing oriented therapist, but it's really simply a sign that you have to help the client come down to a mindful zone. And once the client is in a zone of mindful engagement, then you have felt sense that you can work on. Because then there is the possibility of, the felt sense is not just a coarse expression of either, so much danger that you're in overdrive or so much overwhelm that you're collapsed, but you're in the place where there is the potentiality of acting and of changing. Okay. And so what the theory does is it gives you a wonderful framework. If somebody is in dorsal vagal or sympathetic, you know what to do, which is to bring them back into mindful engagement. And as you are in mindful engagement, then it's possible to work, to find the nuances and to actually help the client change. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these reasons are why I feel that the polyvagal theory is very useful in terms of understanding people, the human condition, in terms of giving us a chance to have a roadmap when we see people, and in terms of um, showing us where it makes sense to put what kind of effort, either in bringing people back to mindful engagement or in once they are in mindful engagement, working in such a way that it's going to be actually effective. People are able to respond to the work. If somebody is in collapse, basically you can do all kinds of felt sensing that you want, but the underlying condition is the person is in overwhelm. So, to give you an example, is yesterday talking to somebody who's kind of in overwhelm about, what's the point? Like her work is, essentially, she feels dismissed. She feels like it's not happening. And there is kind of a collapse. So I recognize it as collapse. We talk a bit and, kind of explore what happened the day before, and actually, as she's talking about it, she's actually finding more energy and her arm is moving more because at that moment, she's gone from the collapse to the earlier moment where there was some energy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as soon as she took really conscious of that energy the day before, it kind of disappeared because it comes that ingrained experience that, no matter what I do, it doesn't work. But as she became more aware of the energy and realized how she loses it because of that learned helplessness, that, the energy cannot, is not enough, it doesn't work, then, I was able to show her that, what, hold on to your energy. And, just consider that what's happening is you have the energy, but you haven't found a way to use the energy. So the reason you have that learned helplessness is you have learned that when you have energy, historically, it hasn't worked because you haven't been able to do much with it. Okay. But now what we're doing is we're going to hold on to the energy and realize that you're in the process of learning and figuring out through trial and error what kinds of things you can do that might be able to change the situation. And in the process, as you hold on to the energy, you see how much better a sense of self you have when you're in that place of having energy compared to the place of collapse. Okay. And
Mhm.
having this kind of framework for it is going to help you come back to the energy. So, time and again, you're going to lose it, you're going to go back to the collapse, and it's okay. But having the roadmap allows you to come back to it.